Have you ever noticed that when you have a problem, you are there? You're participating in it. You're creating it. To use secret terms, you are attracting it. It's so easy to point fingers. It is so easy to say, it's not me, it's COVID, it's the authorities, it's the president, it's the terrorists, it's climate. If you really want to create your reality, you want to manifest some of the things you've been longing for in your life, you've got to take your power back. You've got to bring it back into yourself, into your awareness, into your field of choice. The limitations we're living from right now, we created in the past. We didn't create them today.
I hate this phrase, but I'm going to say it, to fake it until you make it. But with affirmations, and I started doing mine about 5 years ago, it took time, but I'm a big believer of them now. I started seeing some of them happen, or I started adopting the persona of someone that was those affirmations, and I saw real traction with it.
Use the affirmations to uncover the limiting blocks that are in the subconscious mind. I'm still broke. And I'm going, what's wrong? What's wrong with the book? What's wrong with me? What's missing? You have to get clear of the inner blocks in your subconscious before you can think and grow rich, or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. This is huge, Brian. I don't even know how to get it across.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Joe Vitale, the spiritual healer, author, international speaker, and musician. You are best known as one of the world's leading personal growth experts, spending a large part of your career helping people achieve their goals by teaching them to overcome their limiting beliefs and empowering them to create positive change. You were one of the central stars in the hugely successful film The Secret, which is credited with transforming the lives of millions of people around the world through the use of the law of attraction. As an author, you've written over 80 best-selling books, including Zero Limits, The Secret to Attracting Money, and Life's Missing Instruction Manual. Your latest book, Your Unlimited Self, 9 Proven Techniques to Clear Your Mind and Attract the Right Results, explores the scientific measures that can help remove the roadblocks that stop us from achieving our goals. You believe that our actions and outlook are driven by our subconscious mind, and when we change our beliefs, everyone is capable of building the life they've always dreamed of. Joe, welcome back to London Real.
Oh, are you kidding me? Third time to be here? I'm giddy. I can't believe it. I'm excited. Wow. Thank you.
I'm excited too, Joe. It's always great to have you here. I'm really feeling this vibe. I got a lot to talk to you about as well, including some recent experiences for me. So look, I'd love to jump into it and cover all the great stuff that you talk about and the new book. You know, a bunch of people texted me today and said, oh, is that the guy from The Secret? Is that guy from The Secret? And I'm like, yeah. And I'd love it if we could just talk about that, you know, right out the gate, because a lot of people know you from being in this movie that was a huge blockbuster 10, 15 years ago, maybe.
Right.
And, you know, it was something I think the world really hadn't seen. And it put this idea into people's minds that, you know, maybe your power of your thought was stronger than people believed it was. But I remember the last time you were here, you said, Brian, since the movie was so short, they didn't actually understand everything I was saying, because you can't just think of the dream house and have it, or think of the business you want and have it, or think of the relationship. You've got to do more deep work, and I think that's deep work on your subconscious. But tell me, what do people get right about the movie The Secret, and what do they get wrong about the movie The Secret?
Well, it's a great place to start. I love the movie. I'd be telling people to watch it whether I was in it or not. It had a profound effect on the planet and still is. It's traveling around the world and awakening people. What it's doing right and what people are getting right is the idea that your thoughts create. That's powerful. Most people don't even know that. Most people lead lives, as Thoreau said, of quiet desperation. And so they're living to their grave as a victim. They don't know that they have power. They don't know that they have choice. They don't know that they can set an intention and actually move in the direction of it, which is the basics of the law of attraction. But the movie didn't completely explain everything, and I always defend it. It's like it's a freaking movie. It wasn't a graduate course. You know, this wasn't the tutorial on how to create your own reality. It introduced a principle, and that's all it did. So if people got the principle, and most people did, wonderful. The movie succeeded and still is succeeding. But what it didn't go into and what people are missing is the follow through, so to speak. I'm even in the movie saying when you have an idea, you have to take action. I even say it's your job. And a lot of people watch the movie and say, hey, I saw you in it, Joe, but they fogged out when I got to that part. Because a lot of people want magical thinking. They want to sit there, visualize the romance, visualize the car, visualize the house, visualize the bike, the motorcycle, whatever, and have the doorbell ring. And they open it up and there's the love of their life. I don't dismiss that. I do believe in magic and miracles. My shirt says, expect miracles. So my mindset is there, but I'm enough of a take action, entrepreneurial, prolific, productive guy to say, you have to co-create what you want. Visualizing it, intending it, thinking about it is only step one. That's the law of attraction. What do you want? Answer the question. But after that, you have to actually do something. And the example I often give, you mentioned in the introduction, I've written over 80 some books. If I had only sat and visualized being an author and imagined being an author and felt being an author, but never went to the typewriter in the old days or the computer these days, you would not know me as an author. At some point, I had to get off my butt and put it in a chair, turn on the electric typewriter back in the old days, and start pounding the keys. So learning that your mind creates, that's powerful. But you also learn that your body has to have the follow through, and you have to take action to co-create what you want to manifest.
Yeah, that's really well said. It really needs both. And again, I would say probably, Joe, 90-some% of the world is walking around not even believing that your thoughts can manifest things. I mean, just because everything we're taught from kids, I went to school at MIT, got an engineering degree. Trust me, there was no class that said, if you think this, this will happen. The whole basis of that institution is the opposite of that, right? Everything is down to physics and particles that are all predetermined. And so a lot of us grew up in this world where, yeah, we kind of default to that victim status or default to everything's not in our control when the thought makes it actually in our control. But then, like you said, then it takes the action, which is the stuff that makes us uncomfortable, that makes us quote unquote fail, whatever that means. And maybe that's why people fog over. Maybe that's the subconscious saying, yeah, it's a great dream, but you know, I'm just gonna maybe just sit back a little bit.
Yeah, and hope that it shows up. And again, it might, but you have to really do the inner work to make things happen. You really have to get rid of the invisible blocks, right down to believing that anything is possible. If you don't believe that your thoughts create, you already have fueled a thought of limitation. You've actually proven the concept. Your thought created a limitation. But if you don't go past that to realize that you can create your own reality by thinking differently, most of us are married to our thoughts. When we have a thought, we think that's us. A great breakthrough, and this is going to be an awakening right here if people have never heard it before, is the understanding that you are not your thoughts. You have thoughts. It seems to be part of the organic human experience that they just bubble up into consciousness. But most of us, until we wake up, feel we are our thoughts. And so when the thoughts are depressing, we feel depressed. If the thoughts are downers, we feel down. If the thoughts are discouraging, we feel discouraged. We don't realize that, wait a minute, we're separate from the thought. We can choose to listen to it, or we can select a different thought or wait for another thought and then go in a new direction, which will make taking that action a little easier. There's so many levels to this. I don't even know where to begin to start to help people.
Yeah, there are so many levels, but that one is a great way to start to people. Like you said, you're having depressing thoughts one day. Okay, well, those are just those thoughts. You're You're the container. You're the bigger thing than that. And if you can just say, okay, I'm just having a day or an hour or a minute where I'm getting some depressive thoughts, just like it's raining in London right now, go figure, but it was sunny yesterday. And it's just something that's happening. It doesn't necessarily define who you are. That's a big start, right away, just to separate yourself from that. And then you said something else, which I think is interesting, Joe, because you said it's not just about the thought, it's actually really, truly believing it. And I know a lot of people probably listening, and I did this in the past, you say an affirmation, I'm going to be a billionaire, I'm going to be happy. But deep down inside, you don't really believe it. And so you might as well just be reading the ingredients on your toothpaste tube at the end of the day. And you go deep on this, don't you?
I love talking about it. Affirmations are one way to program the mind, but we really got to understand how they work. First of all, I remember having lunch with a woman years ago, and she said, I tried affirmations. Affirmations don't work for me. And I listened to her, then I looked at her and said, do you realize what you said was an affirmation? You just affirmed affirmations don't work for me. And as a result, you have the experience that affirmations aren't working, which means you proved that affirmations work. So it gets a little twisted, it's cyclical, but you have to awaken to the reality that what we're telling ourselves are affirmations. When we sit here, and maybe somebody's watching, this is my third time with you, but maybe it's the first time for somebody watching, and they say to themselves, none of this stuff works for me, or that guy's just full of it. It's all BS. Those are affirmations. They're repeating their own limitations enough that they believe them. The thing to realize is that you can change the direction. You can change the direction and start saying, like, affirmations do work. I intend to be a billionaire or a millionaire or have hundreds of thousands of dollars show up unexpectedly. When you first say these new affirmations, they won't feel real because they're butting up against the existing affirmations that are already hardwired in your brain. So what we have to remind ourselves is the way I got here is through the affirmations that were stated unconsciously. When I was homeless back in the 70s in Dallas and struggling, my affirmations were negations. It's like, nothing's working out for me. It's me against the world. I felt totally alone. I was angry. And everything I repeated were affirmations of self-destruction. But I didn't know it. I didn't know it because I wasn't in a coaching program. We didn't have a show like this. I was learning the best I could from the public library and reading books. But for the most part, it was a slow process until I realized how I already got to that point, homeless and later in poverty and traveling up the path of awakening, was by paying attention to my thinking. The existing thinking is from the previous affirmations. When we introduce new affirmations, we're going to feel like, oh, I'm just lying to myself. Of course you're lying to yourself. You're starting a new self-creation at this very point in time. As you keep repeating it, you'll get more comfortable with it. It'll rewire your brain, and it'll start to become the new truth. It'll become second nature to you, to the point where you don't think about it anymore, because now you have a new mindset. How did you get it? By creating a new habit. The habit of positive affirmations. Again, when you first start them, they're not going to feel comfortable because you're doing something you haven't done before. And it's butting against the software that's already in your brain.
Yeah, and I know your thoughts on affirmations changed over the years. I know at one point you weren't a fan, but now it sounds like you are. I hate this phrase, but I'm going to say it, the fake it until you make it. But with affirmations, and I started doing mine about 5 years ago, and I really, it took time, but I'm a big believer of them now, is that, you say them in the beginning and you're like, well, how can this possibly work? And then, but then I just made it a habit every single morning. And I started seeing some of them happen, or I started adopting the persona of someone that was those affirmations. And I saw real traction with it. But you kind of changed your mind over time.
I did, and I'm very impressed with the number of people that you interview, how you would remember something that I gave away as a throwaway comment a long time ago. So I'm impressed with you, and thank you. That's an honor that you remembered it, and I'm also flattered. Yeah, I think affirmations don't go deep enough. I think affirmations are the long approach to self-change. I'm not dismissing them because we got to start someplace. And by the explanation and the dialogue you and I just had here, it may be the breakthrough that somebody's been waiting for. They can finally realize, wait, I don't have to listen to the negative voice in my head. I can create a cheerleader of sorts. That cheerleader now has new affirmations. I'm going to start listening to the cheerleader in my brain. Now you're moving in a whole new direction. I think it's more powerful, and this is going to the next level. It's going a step deeper and ties into a lot of my current books and current research. And that is the idea that you use the affirmations to uncover the limiting blocks that are in the subconscious mind. For example, if somebody is sitting there and they say, well, I really do want to have more money, and Dr. Joe says, if I just start saying I am now attracting more money, I'll move in that direction. That's cool. That is a start. That's using an affirmation. But the next level is to pay attention to the rebuttal statements in your own head. When you say, I am now going to attract being a millionaire, whatever it is for somebody, and their little voice comes up and says, how in the world will that ever happen? That's not going to happen to me. It happens to Brian. It happens to Joe. It happens to the people in The Secret. It doesn't happen to me. All of that chatter needs to be cleared. That chatter is revealing the beliefs of limitation that are deeper than the affirmations. And in fact, when we release and erase those deeper levels of subconscious blocks, now the affirmations can deep dive and lodge. That can lodge because there isn't any interference. So the affirmations, just on a surface level, powerful. But also, I would say, use them to uncover the blocks in the subconscious/unconscious mind. As you find those, then we can start working on clearing them. When you clear them, magic happens at that point because you accelerate your results. The blocks are gone, and the blocks were all inside of you. They're not outside. That's what we all look, but actually it's inside.
Yeah, really love the way you put that. You know, I train martial arts, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is something I've been rolling for about 20 years. And if people don't know, when you start in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, your first few months, you're taught a few of these techniques, submission techniques, and you get a white belt, which just means you're kind of starting. Now, if you train for about 10 years, you'll get a black belt. And, you know, a white belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu after a few months, you know, can actually choke someone unconscious and do some stuff. And so a little bit of learning can get you a long way. And I would say that as an analogy, if you watch the movie The Secret, that alone will probably get you a step change of potentially, you know, 10 times better the way of looking at life. But then again, if you really want to get to the black belt level, you're going to have to say, okay, where's the action? Where's the subconscious? Same with affirmations. I'd say if you're not doing them, starting to do them will, first of all, immediately accelerate you forward. But over time, if you want to get black belt at it, you have to listen to, like you said, the feedback of the chatter and start going deep on why you're really not buying your own affirmations and do that work subconsciously in order to break through. And so I know we're hitting a bunch of different levels here. Let's talk about doing that subconscious work, because I think that's a lot of what your work is about. How do people start to address the subconscious, Joe?
That's the $1 million question right there, is how do you address the subconscious? And maybe we have to look at why it's important to address it. Most of us are just driven by our conscious mind. We're listening to our thoughts, as we mentioned earlier. Most of us think we are our thoughts. Most of us think our thoughts are the only things that we have in terms of choice. So the thought comes in, we obey the thought, and our life just keeps stuck. We're just cycling through the same old problems. For most people, it's a relationship problem. Another person might have a health problem. Another person a financial problem. Each person seems to specialize in a particular block, and they keep cycling through it. They get a little break, then they have the problem again. They get a little break, they have the problem again. And it isn't until there's a wake up, and maybe it is for some people today, and they look within and go, well, maybe it's me. Maybe there's something in me that's running, a program that's running that is creating and recreating and rerunning the very same problem, especially when it's different for each person. We've each got a different program, so it keeps running there. That's the first level, is to realize there's something deeper. The deeper thing is the subconscious. When I use subconscious and unconscious interchangeably, it is the iceberg below what is seen. It's the iceberg underneath the water. And that is the big database of experiences and programming and memories. And depending on what psychology and philosophy you look at, It can contain everything from past lives, or at least from your downline, your epigenetics lineage right there. It can all be in your subconscious. And we live from our subconscious. We think we're living from our conscious, but we're living from our subconscious. It's causing us to take actions. It's causing us to think in a different way, to believe in a different way. And if we want to do any change, it isn't just on the conscious. We have to go into the subconscious and kind of rewire it, clean it up, cut some wires, so to speak, in the software of the mind. And this is one reason why affirmations aren't my number one favorite thing to do, because we're still working on the conscious mind. We're trying to change the thoughts there. With repeated use and using it the way we've already described, will have an effect in the subconscious mind. We'll start to do the work there. But the really heavy duty work needs to be in the subconscious. And Brian, I'm sorry, this is where I get on a soapbox, because I think this is my contribution to the whole self-help industry. I think there's what I'm calling a missing secret. And the missing secret is that you can intend all you want. You can visualize all you want. You can do every fancy, latest, greatest, trendy, new agey technique and self-help, self-improvement technique that comes out that you want to try. That's great. And they will work as long as you don't have a block in your subconscious. If you can get what you want by saying, this is what I'm affirming, this is what I'm going to take action for, and then you go ahead and you create it, you didn't have a block. You did it. You're done. You can go on to the next thing. But if you're repeatedly saying, I'm affirming more money, or I'm affirming health, or I'm affirming relationship, but damn it, block, 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 it doesn't seem to happen to me. It's probably a block in the subconscious. We have to go there. That's what I think is the missing secret. The self-help world doesn't seem to talk about it enough. I'm sure other people are, but I often feel like a lone voice. I think back to when I was homeless. I was living in the Dallas Public Library. So on one level, it was bliss. I was with books. But on another level, I had no money, no home, no car, no relationship, nothing else. And I remember reading Think and Grow Rich around 1975. Think and Grow Rich, one of the greatest self-improvement books of all time, a masterpiece. It's made more millionaires than any other book that I've ever heard of. So I'm reading Think and Grow Rich, and when I'm done, I'm still broke. I'm still broke. And I'm going, what's wrong? What's wrong with the book? What's wrong with me? What's missing? And it took me a decade to 2 decades to realize wasn't anything wrong with me. And what was missing is that you have to get clear of the inner blocks in your subconscious before you can think and grow rich, or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. This is huge, Brian. I don't even know how to get it across.
Yeah, and I think in the book you kind of say, or you use this term, you must clear a path before you can build the road. And you start going into these techniques of trying to clear, I guess, the subconscious and try to clear these things out. You have a bunch of different ways. Of course, the classic that I always remember you for is the Ho'oponopono. I probably messed that up. As one of your
you did great.
Clearing techniques, because I always remember you for that. But I guess, and I'm kind of moving into the book now, but is that really what the book is about, is 9 of those techniques to go for the subconscious?
That's exactly what it's for. The book is called Your Unlimited Self, 9 Proven Techniques to Clear Your Mind and Attract the Results You Want. So the 9 techniques are all about clearing the mind, and this all ties into the missing secret. This is what explains when people get results, they've cleared the blocks. When they get them faster than ever before, it's because they cleared the blocks. I have numerous stories from my own life. I think you and I talked about me being a musician at one point. Yeah. The very quick story is when I had turned 60, which at this point was almost 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to be a musician. And that was great. I stated my intention. We all have heard about stating intentions. I stated my intention. Next thing that happened was profound fear and self-doubt. And I've said, whenever you try to do something you've never done before, you're going to feel fear. You're leaving your comfort zone. I was leaving my comfort zone. I almost gave up on being a musician because I almost talked myself out of it. I almost listened to the monkey mind saying, oh, you can't do it, and let the doubts rule. And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm the guy who was in the secret. I'm the guy who was teaching people to go for their dreams and expect miracles. So I had to get clear. I had to go within myself to find out what were the limiting beliefs, delete those beliefs, and then the short story is going from nothing, no music experience, no musical background, had never been in the studio as a musician, didn't have a band. Anyway, I have a band. I perform with the Band of Legends. We've recorded. I have 15 albums, 6 of them singer-songwriter albums. Some of my music's been used in movies. Some of my songs were nominated for the Posy Award. I'm saying all this to prove that once you get clear of those hidden beliefs in the subconscious, the things that you were wanting to create, to attract as results in your life, you've collapsed time. They happen almost instantaneously. You still do the work, but the work is play and the results are fast. That's what this whole book is about, getting clear to get the results.
Now, I'm guessing when you want to sneak up on the subconscious, you got to sneak up on it. You got to probably do some things that the conscious mind maybe resists or doesn't understand, because again, like you said, you're dealing with everything below the surface, and that conscious mind, you know, maybe it doesn't even like to admit that there's anything below the surface, and so it has to kind of trust the process, I'm guessing, to go into some of these clearing techniques. Am I getting that right, or am I slightly off with some of these?
You're giving me something to think about that I hadn't really looked at before. I don't think the subconscious mind is trying to dodge the beliefs or the programs that are within it. I feel that with a little bit of probing, you find them. It's like just turning the light on in a dark room. It's like, oh, there they are, right over there. They weren't hiding, and they're not scary. This isn't some sort of Freudian secret demon box where we're going to unlock it and then all the spooky stuff comes out. That's not what this is about. We're only looking for the blocks to having, doing, and being what we want. For example, if somebody's sitting right now and they're saying to themselves, okay, this all sounds great. I'm ready to attract my soulmate. And they want romance in their life. They want to start dating again. That's great. That's their intention. I would say the next level is to pay attention to what's coming up in your mind as that self-talk behind it. Are you fully endorsing that belief? And are you starting to go to socials or go online or join some groups or matchmaking, this or that? I don't know what's out there, what people do today. But are you doing that? Or are you not taking any action at all because you're starting to think, I'm too old, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too whatever. And all the good ones are taken. These are limiting beliefs. And when we become aware of them, then we can move into questioning them and erasing them. I don't think there's a hide and seek game. I think there's simply the intention that I want to have a result and I'd like to find out what's in the way of it. So we're going to go into exploring the subconscious mind.
Okay, good. I'm glad you cleared that up. We got to talk about the Ho'oponopono technique, because I remember it from last time, but I also don't remember it as a clearing technique. I remembered it as, well, again, I remember the 4 things, but do you mind talking about that? I know you're probably world famous for it, but could you talk about that one? Because it's in the book.
I love talking about Ho'oponopono, and I've at this point written 3 separate books about it, and of course use it as a clearing technique in this new book, Your Unlimited Self. Ho'oponopono is incredibly profound. It is a spiritual healing technique that is used for clearing. And what we're clearing is our perceptions that are in the way of recognizing the divine miracle of the moment. And I know that's a mouthful all by itself, but let me back up. The story, in short, is that there had been a therapist who helped heal an entire ward of mentally ill criminals at the state hospital in Hawaii. The punchline here is that he agreed to be there, but he wasn't going to do traditional therapy. The patients were violent criminals. They were shackled or sedated daily, and doctors and nurses, social workers were quitting every day. It was just a hellish experience. He said, I will go and work at that hospital, but I'm not going to work in the traditional way. I'm going to close the door of my office and I'm going to do my own brand of therapy. And what he did was look at his files for those patients, and he practiced this thing that's called Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono is a way of changing the inside of you to cause a ripple effect and outer change. So he's looking at the files of these despicable, criminally insane inmates. And as he's looking at it, he's feeling rage, he's feeling embarrassment, he's feeling grief, he's feeling confusion, all kind of things are going through him. And what he's doing is he's closing his eyes, he's going into his heart, he's feeling his emotions. And then as a kind of a prayer, as a kind of petition to what he would call the divine, what these days I just call the great something, he would be saying 4 key phrases. And the 4 key phrases anybody can say today: I love you, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. As he would say those 4 phrases, what he was cleaning and clearing on was his own emotions. This is why it's a clearing technique. He was noticing that his judgment of these files, which were representing these people, was causing him to no longer be at peace. He needed to be at peace. So he's doing, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, as a way to correct the perceptions of what he was seeing on those charts. As he started to feel more at peace, now he feels like he's complete. The miracle happens in a way that I still haven't been able to explain, because the outer mirrors the inner. The patients, the ones that were shackled or sedated, started to get better. They didn't have to be shackled. They didn't have to be sedated. Within months, some of them were being pronounced as being whole and healed and released back into society. And all we can see is that the therapist was doing Ho'oponopono. I, of course, heard the story, went looking for the therapist, found the therapist. I co-wrote with him the first book, Zero Limits, telling all of this. We did 3 seminars together, and he passed away this year. But he left a legacy, he left an impact, and he left this technique, Ho'oponopono. So when somebody is sitting there and they're thinking, well, I want to attract health, maybe they're not feeling so great, or they've got something where the medical people are saying that's incurable, or go write your will, go on home because that's it for you. Ho'oponopono would say, look inside yourself and how do you feel about it? How do you feel? Are you angry? Are you enraged because of this? Are you doubting it? Are you fearful? Where are you at emotionally? And Ho'oponopono would be brought in, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, to help you clear your emotions. When you clear your emotions, which is cleaning the subconscious mind, you are now at a place, first of all, of serenity, and second of all, clarity. This means you can look around and you might see options you didn't see before. When you're coming from fear, my God, the blinders are on, you can't see your opportunities all around you. But then when you're at serenity and you can see your opportunities, you can see your choices, you can use wisdom to choose something that may heal you. And if not, you're now at peace, which is what you wanted all along anyway. So Ho'oponopono is incredibly powerful. I have seen it used and heard it used for probably anything anybody would ever mention.
And this doctor, he just was in his office repeating this to himself. He didn't get he didn't get the inmates to do it.
No, he didn't get anybody else to do it. After a while, some of the social workers or nurses would come up to him and say, we don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, do it for us too. And then other ones would say, can you tell us what you're doing? But as far as I know, and of course I had interviewed the social workers, interviewed Dr. Hulen, who was the therapist, no, he never taught it to them. He was doing it as an inside job.
It's fascinating. You know, I'm just coming up with a bunch of things. I'm just going to blurt them out. You know, these days, plant medicine is popular in the world, and some people drink things like ayahuasca. I've had my own experiences. But if you go back into the history of the shamans, traditionally, you would go to see the shaman would drink the ayahuasca to heal you. And you weren't consuming it, but you could consume it because they were changing their energy state. And again, I just seen this because it sounds something similar to what this guy was doing. And it's amazing, you know, say someone who is super enlightened or calm that walks into the room, it can change an entire room. If people feel that energy, whether they're inspired by it or calm by it or whatever, I mean, you know, take it with the Dalai Lama walks in the room, like, you know, all of a sudden it just can change the vibe of it. So for people that initially think, well, how could that possibly be true? Like it kind of can be true. And that kind of a peace and energy is, I guess, infectious. And I guess that's what happened in this prison somehow.
Yeah. So, well, I ended up writing 3 books about Ho'oponopono. Zero Limits was the first, and that by far has taken the world by storm, introduced it to humanity around the planet. And then I wrote, 10 years later, I wrote At Zero, because I had heard so many questions and I answered them. And then fairly recently, I wrote The Fifth Phrase, because I was introduced to a 5th phrase to use on top of the first 4. The way to understand Ho'oponopono, at least in my opinion, is that its philosophy is that there is nothing outside of you. it's all an illusion. There's a little bit of Buddhism in there and a little bit of Jungian psychology in there, because it's saying that everything else is a mirror. And so if there's anything on the outside that's bothering you, it's not really the outside. I know when the therapist, Dr. Hulen, and I did seminars together, one of his favorite questions would be, have you ever noticed that when you have a problem, you are there? You're participating in it. You're creating it. To use secret terms, you are attracting it. But you're not doing it consciously. It's not like you sat there and said, well, I'm going to create homelessness. I'm going to create this encounter with my neighbor or employee or a vendor. We didn't consciously do that. Subconsciously, it was there, and it got manifested into what you're perceiving to be reality. But if you go back into where it all started and you dilute it with Ho'oponopono, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, you then change what's actually causing the reflection. It's almost like your mind is an old movie projector, and it's just shooting out what you're observing, but you are not just observing it, you're in it. You're in the movie of your life, but it's being projected from inside of you. And if you want to change the movie of your life, one of the 9 different ways you can do it is Ho'oponopono.
Yeah, it's beautiful. A friend of mine and a guest on the show, his name is Wes Watson, spent 10 years in the California prison system. He has a phrase. He says, you don't see the world through a window, you see it through a mirror. And
Interesting.
It's the way and when people first hear that, what are you talking about? But it's like, he also says that the way you view the world is a secret confession of self. And these are hard things for people to hear, because like you said, they're like, no, there's a problem, or that person's bad, or blah, 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 blah. But it's all you.
Believe me. But it is all you, and that is the hardest thing for people to get, especially with Ho'oponopono, because it's so easy to point fingers. It is so easy to say, it's not me, it's COVID, it's the authorities, it's the president, it's the terrorists, it's climate, it's pick something. It's really easy to just throw responsibility to somewhere else. And that's part of the wake up. And maybe that's a reoccurring theme for our time together today. It's the wake up is that if you really want to create your reality, you want to manifest some of the things you've been longing for in your life, you've got to take your power back. You've got to bring it back into yourself, into your awareness, into your field of choice. When we sit there and go, well, my life would be great if it wasn't for my parents, or my life would be great if it wasn't for fill in the blank, just pick somebody. And now we've got somebody as our scapegoat. Now we can say it's all their fault, and we don't change. We don't do anything. But if we can bring it all inside of ourselves and go, okay, the way I was brought up, they did the best they could. Whatever's going on in the world doesn't necessarily have to affect me personally, and go inside and make choices from our ability to choose our own direction. Now we're empowered. But I would say that one of the big complaints people have about Ho'oponopono is they don't want to take responsibility. They don't want it to have it on their shoulders.
And to practice it, do you repeat those 4 phrases kind of over and over again? What's the best way if people want to try it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say try it, just like you just said. I would notice what's going on in the world and what's going on in the person's life. Almost everybody has something they're wrestling with virtually all the time. Pick whatever's going on in your life. Notice that it's inside of you. Notice that your perceptions about it being a problem or not are not outside. Where you're experiencing it as a problem is not outside. You experience a problem inside yourself. It's the only place you can experience it as a problem. So as we come inside of ourselves and we realize, okay, this is what I'm experiencing yet. Pretend that you're talking to your version of God, the divine, Gaia. An atheist could say nature or the great cosmos or the energy field of all possibilities. As I said earlier, I just call it the great something. Joseph Campbell called it the great unknown, I think, or the great mystery. And so we have this conversation. We just say, I don't know where all these feelings are coming from. I don't know what created it, but thank you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. You can say it in any order. You never say it out loud. You never say it to another person. It's an internal experience, like a private prayer that you're saying. And since I seem to have the floor, let me explain this one more minute of how this works. When you say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, it's kind of shorthand for a longer process. You're basically saying, I'm sorry for whatever the belief is in me that I'm not aware of. Please forgive me for being unconscious to the operating system that's in my own mind. Thank you for resolving this, clearing this, erasing it, rewiring it, whatever it takes to return to peace and to remove the limiting program in the subconscious. And I love you for the process. I love you for my life. I love you for fill in the blank. You want to move into a state of love. So when you're saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, there's a little bit more going on. And I'll say one more thing. I've done this enough to know that a lot of people object to saying, I'm sorry, or please forgive me. It's like, I didn't do anything wrong. And it's like, that's not where we're coming from. We're saying, I'm sorry and please forgive me for being unaware, being unconscious. And I use the example that if you go to a crowded store and you bump into somebody, don't you naturally turn and say, I'm sorry, because you didn't see them there? It doesn't mean you need to be flogged. You didn't do any crime kind of deserving punishment experience. You just bumped into somebody. That's the level of consciousness when you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. It's like, I was unaware. I didn't know that this was going on in my brain. So I'm sorry it was there. Please forgive me for the programming that I was unconscious to receiving. Thank you for clearing it up. And I love you for the healing. That's kind of the longer process that's going on.
Beautiful. I love this technique. I'm going to give it a try tonight and this weekend and see what happens. And now it makes more sense to me that you're saying this quietly to yourself. And then I like how you expanded on it as well. And look, if you can't say I'm sorry or please forgive me, that should be a pretty obvious a flag that you got, that the ego is in the way here somewhere.
Thank you for saying that. I have often said that. If you can't say I'm sorry or please forgive me, then you better say I'm sorry or please forgive me.
Exactly.
Because your ego is blinding you to what's going on. Very well done, Brian.
Yeah, and again, I just had another thought. One of my mentors, I meet some pretty colorful people in this job. His name is Dan Pena. He's known as the $1 trillion man. He's got a castle in Scotland. Apparently, he uses my tailor as well. But he has a phrase where he says, any problem in your life will immediately be replaced by an even bigger problem. And it's funny when he says that, because what he's really trying to say is your problems are coming from inside of you, you know?
Yes.
And if you're aware of that, and if you think about your life, you're always like, yeah, as soon as I solve that one problem, I always have this other problem. And then I have this other problem. And yeah, because they're all coming from inside of you. So if you can acknowledge that, you'll probably look at your entire life differently, as opposed to this stream of consciousness of, oh man, there's that, and then there's that, and then there's that. And except I've heard another mentor that said what they actually want in their life is high quality problems, because you know you're always going to have problems. So let's just have high quality problems, like my Lamborghini keeps breaking down. I have to pay so much taxes because I'm making so much money. Yeah, I'm too happy all the time. My face hurts because I'm laughing. You know, so I don't know. I'm just throwing out some ideas there, but it's if people do think about it, it's true. Any problem you have somehow always seems to be replaced by another one.
Yeah, it seems like the subconscious mind is creating a fill in the void kind of a game. If you get rid of one problem, it's like, oh, we have a void there. Let's move something else over. But when you catch on to it and you kind of realize, oh, this is what my mind is doing, then you can either stop it or exchange it, or upgrade it like you just did. I like that. My Lamborghini keeps breaking down. That's good. I just bought a Lamborghini, so I'm listening to that one. And just have fun with all of this. You can actually upgrade your life.
Yeah, you could see the tricks that your brain is playing with you. I don't dream very often, but I've had a couple dreams in the last year where I laugh out loud when I wake up, because I'm like, you know, that subconscious mind went right to my button and pushed it. And they created that dream, and I just saw what you did, because I remember the dream, and you were very clever about bringing like my mom into it and have her say something when I was a kid, and I caught you. You're totally busted on that one. And again, it just reminded me of how it can create this reality from my conscious brain, and I have to realize, oh yeah, of course, it's always going to create these new problems. Hey, let's look at it as a game. All right, cool. My job is not to react to that today, and to realize that it's always going to have an inventory of them, and I'm just going to accept them, maybe do a little ho'oponopono and just say thank you. I appreciate that.
You know, as we're talking, it occurs to me that there's one more thing that we can do that's probably a better idea.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.